I was invited to my brother's engagement party. But when I arrived, my aunt whispered, he only invited you out of pity. There was no name card, no seat, no one even said hello. I turned around and left. The next morning, my brother was at my door saying, you didn't have to cause a scene. There are moments in life that hit you so hard, they redefine everything. For me, it was standing alone at my brother's engagement party, clutching a wrapped gift, realizing I wasn't just forgotten, I was intentionally excluded, a mere prop in a family drama I never asked to be part of. That night wasn't just an insult. It was the sharp, painful crack that finally shattered years of quiet hope. My name's Jordan. I'm 28, single, and for as long as I can remember, I've been the odd one out in my family. Not because I ever caused trouble, but because I never fit the mold. I didn't chase the prestigious careers, didn't join the family business, didn't even stay in town. I built my own quiet life as a freelance writer, traveling and keeping to myself. Honestly, I'd stopped expecting much from them. I was used to being an afterthought. But then, that invitation arrived. Thick, cream-colored cardstock, my name elegantly embossed in gold. It was for Nathan's engagement party to Ashley. For a brief, foolish second, something stirred inside me. A tiny spark of hope. Maybe, just maybe, I was finally being seen, truly included. Nathan and I had become distant. Texts were short, conversations non-existent. So, this actual invitation, not just a group message or a passing mention, felt significant. I thought, could this be his way of reaching out, of mending things? The party was at a fancy vineyard, about 30 minutes from the city. I spent way too long choosing what to wear. A smart, simple navy blazer, white shirt, slacks. And the gift? I splurged on an expensive Dutch oven from their registry, wrapped it carefully. I wanted to show up, to be supportive, to prove I cared. As I pulled into the gravel parking lot, the sun was setting, painting the vines in a warm, cinematic glow. I pictured it, Nathan's face lighting up, a hug, Ashley's welcoming smile. I imagined sitting at a table, feeling like I belonged again. Instead, before I even fully stepped through the door, my aunt leaned in, her voice syrupy and low, reeking faintly of Chardonnay. He only invited you out of pity, you know, she whispered, as if sharing a delightful secret. Ashley said they had to, otherwise it would be too obvious. My stomach dropped. I froze, the wrapped gift still clutched in both hands. What? I managed. Surely I'd misheard. She just tilted her head, giving me this look, like I was a stray dog who'd wandered onto the wrong lawn. Oh, you know how it is, she shrugged, as if it was common knowledge. It's nothing personal. We just didn't think you'd actually show. That hit me like a physical blow. I looked past her into the main room. Round tables with crisp linens, elaborate centerpieces, golden string lights overhead. Everyone was already seated, laughing, clinking glasses, toasting. I slowly walked past a few tables, scanning for my name. Nothing. I circled the perimeter once, then twice. No seat, no card. No one looked up, no one said hello. Not even Nathan. I stood there by the bar, the heavy gift feeling like a weight, like a symbol of my naivete. I must have looked like a fool, like someone crashing a party they weren't wanted at. My chest tightened, a familiar mix of shame and profound disappointment rising like a cold tide. I had told myself not to get my hopes up. I told myself it didn't matter, that I was just going out of politeness. But it did matter. More than I ever wanted to admit. Without a word, I turned and walked straight out. I didn't even set the gift down. I just carried it back to my car, placing it gently on the passenger seat, like a fragile person. I sat there in silence. No tears, no screams. Just a hollow ache. Then I drove home. I didn't post about it. Didn't text anyone. I just went quiet. The next morning, at 8:12 a.m., my doorbell rang. I hadn't even made coffee. I opened the door in sweatpants, hair a mess, and there he was, Nathan. Still in yesterday's suit, tie gone, looking like he hadn't slept a wink. You didn't have to make a scene, he said flatly, as if I'd burned the vineyard down. I blinked. A scene? I stormed out. People noticed. I gave a short, humorless laugh. Nathan, there was no seat for me. No one even said hello. He shifted uncomfortably. You could have just stayed. Found a chair somewhere. Mingled. I wasn't supposed to be there, was I? I asked, my voice dangerously calm. You didn't plan for me. He didn't answer right away. Then, look, Ashley handled the seating. I told her to keep it small. I didn't think you'd make a big deal out of it. So, I was invited out of pity, I said quietly, the words stinging fresh. That's what Aunt Linda said. He sighed, rubbing his face. She talks too much. She wasn't supposed to say that. I took a step back from the door, suddenly so incredibly tired. You should go. Jordan, no, really. If this is the part where I'm supposed to apologize for embarrassing you, I cut him off. It's not going to happen. He looked genuinely hurt, as if I'd betrayed him. This is exactly why we don't talk much, he muttered. No, I said, my voice colder than I intended. We don't talk because you only remember I exist when it's convenient. When you want to feel good about inviting all the siblings, so no one can say you didn't. He didn't respond, just stared at me for a moment, then turned and walked back to his car. As he pulled away, I glanced at the kitchen table where the Dutch oven still sat, wrapped, unopened. I didn't know what to do with it. That moment stayed with me. Not just Aunt Linda's cruel whisper, or the lack of a name card, but that stunned look on Nathan's face when I refused to play along. When I didn't accept my role as the forgotten sibling, grateful just to be near the table, even if there was no seat. But I wasn't done yet. Not by a long shot. Because if I wasn't truly part of the family, then I didn't owe them anything. And I had something they'd all conveniently forgotten about. Something they were going to need very, very soon. Let's just say they were going to remember my name, whether there was a card or not. For a few days, I went completely dark. No texts, no social media. It wasn't out of spite. It was survival. I needed space to think, to feel, to let the sting fade, so I could breathe again without tasting bitterness. But underneath the silence, I was remembering. See, what most of my family didn't know because they never cared enough to ask, was that for the past 3 years, I'd been helping out behind the scenes with something pretty important to all of them, my grandfather's trust. Before he passed, Grandpa Thomas quietly made me one of the trustees. He didn't announce it at a family dinner. He just pulled me aside one day, the last time I visited him in Vermont, and said, "You've got a good head and a quiet heart, Jordan. I want you to help make sure the money doesn't ruin the family." At the time, I didn't fully understand. But then came the paperwork, the lawyers, the meetings. I learned the ropes. The trust had very clear clauses, specific stipulations. And, most importantly, a large portion of the funds weren't just handed out blindly. They were conditional: education support, mortgage subsidies, even business loans. All required trustee approval from me and a firm out of Boston. Nathan's entire business, that entrepreneurial consulting agency he loved to brag about, it had received a sizable loan from that trust 2 years ago. He had no idea I was involved. Grandpa had asked me to keep it quiet, said it would be better that way. But now I was starting to think that promise had run its course. A week after the party, an email landed in my inbox from the firm. A new disbursement request from Nathan. A sizable one. He wanted additional funds to expand, lease a second office, hire an assistant. His request was wordy, filled with jargon and vague projections. But the kicker? He needed the funds fast, within 2 weeks, or a deal would fall through. Normally, I would have just passed it along, approved it. But now, I clicked reply and requested a meeting. We met at a small, neutral cafe downtown. I chose it on purpose, quiet, public, close to his office. Nathan arrived late, still in his tailored suit, but his energy was off. Tense, checking his watch, tapping the table. "Thanks for meeting," he said quickly, sitting across from me. "I assume this is about the request?" I nodded, taking a sip of my coffee. "It is." He leaned forward. "So, can we move forward? I know the firm usually drags their feet, but this one's time-sensitive." I studied him for a moment. "You didn't know I was a trustee, did you?" His eyebrows pulled together. "What?" "I've been one of the trustees on Grandpa's estate since he passed. I've seen every request, every report, every loan. He went quiet. His face went from pale to flushed. Seriously? Seriously? He exhaled visibly, trying to recalibrate. Okay, that's unexpected but fine. Look, you've seen the numbers. It's a good investment. I leaned back in my chair. It might be. But here's the thing, Nathan. These funds aren't guaranteed. They're based on values Grandpa outlined. Family unity, responsibility, transparency. Come on, Jordan, he said, irritation creeping in. Don't make this personal. This is business. But you made it personal, I replied, my voice steady. At that party. With the way you treated me. With the way your fiancé handled the seating chart, or lack of one. With how you couldn't even look me in the eye that night. He opened his mouth to defend himself, but I cut him off. And then you show up at my house trying to guilt me, saying I made a scene. No, I didn't make a scene. I quietly walked away, but I could have. Nathan leaned forward again, his tone lower. So what? This is revenge. No, I said calmly. This is accountability. He looked like he wanted to flip the table, but we were in public. And Nathan's image mattered more to him than anything. So he sat back, forced a smile, and said, Look, I'll talk to Ashley. We'll smooth things over. I'll apologize if that's what you want. That's not what I want, I said. I want to know that if this trust is going to support you again, you'll treat the people behind it with a little more respect. His jaw clenched. So, you're holding the funds hostage until I play nice. You can call it that, I said. I call it protecting Grandpa's legacy. He stood up, almost knocking over his chair. You're unbelievable. And you, I said softly, should be more careful who you treat like they don't matter. He stormed out. I stayed and finished my coffee. Later that week, I sent the firm a report detailing concerns about his request. Questionable expenses, unclear ROI, a lack of transparency in prior funding reports. I didn't outright veto it, but I recommended a delay, an audit, a deeper review, which meant the funds wouldn't be approved anytime soon. I didn't hear from Nathan for 2 more days. Then one evening, my phone rang. It was Mom. Jordan, she said, her voice sharp. What are you doing? I blinked.
Hi, Mom.
Nice to hear from you, too. Don't play games. Nathan told me you're blocking the trust funds. He needs that money. I stood up and walked to the window, staring out at the rain tapping against the glass. So now you call. You've always been so sensitive, she said, as if that explained everything. You didn't even give them a chance at the party. You just left. You embarrassed us. I embarrassed you? I repeated, by not sitting at a table that didn't exist for me? You should have spoken up, she snapped. Made it work. That's what family does. I laughed, cold and bitter.
No, Mom.
What family does is make room. What family does is notice when someone's being excluded. What family does is care. My voice broke slightly. You all made it very clear where I stand. There was silence on the line. Then she said, So this is payback. No, I said. This is me finally setting a boundary. And if you don't like that, maybe ask yourself why. I hung up before she could respond. But I knew that call was just the beginning. Because once the money stopped flowing, people who never spoke to me were going to start showing up. And not for the reasons they claimed. It took less than 48 hours. By the end of the week, my phone went from collecting dust to lighting up like it was New Year's Eve. Missed calls, voicemails, texts that started polite. Hey Jordan, can we talk? Then escalated into passive-aggressive guilt trips. First it was Nathan, then Mom again, then Aunt Linda. Even Cousin Rachel, who hadn't said more than 5 words to me in 3 years, suddenly wanted to grab coffee and catch up. Yeah, okay. I didn't respond. Instead, I forwarded everything to the Boston firm handling the trust and asked them to begin a full compliance review. I wanted a paper trail, something formal. I wasn't trying to ruin Nathan, but if he was going to use Grandpa's money, he was going to do it by the book. And I wasn't going to be bullied or sweet-talked out of enforcing that. The trust wasn't some family piggy bank. It was set up to support, not enable. And enabling was exactly what my family had become experts at. Around that time, I started hearing whispers from my old hometown. My childhood friend, Daniel, who still worked at the local credit union, shot me a message. "Hey, just FYI, heard your brother's expansion got delayed. He's blaming funding issues. You good?" I told him I was fine. Better than fine, actually. Because for the first time in years, I wasn't playing the silent background role anymore. I was steering the wheel. A week later, the fallout really began. Nathan showed up at my apartment again, but this time I didn't open the door. He knocked once, twice, then a third time. I stood behind the peephole, arms crossed, my heart calm. "I know you're in there," he muttered. "Come on, Jordan. Don't do this." He paused, then added, "You're going to tank everything over a party?" That made me laugh quietly, because he still didn't get it. This wasn't about just the party. It was about years of subtle exclusion. Birthday dinners I wasn't invited to. Group family vacations where I found out through Instagram. Conversations I was talked over in. Jokes made at my expense that no one thought twice about. The party wasn't the beginning. It was the final, agonizing straw. I watched him from the peephole as he stood there a minute longer, then finally turned and walked off. No voicemail, no apology. Just silence. And then came the real surprise. Ashley texted me. I almost didn't recognize the number, but the message was short and polite. "Hi, Jordan. I know things have been tense. Would you be open to meeting? Just the two of us." I sat with that for a while. I didn't know her anything, but something about the tone made me curious. It didn't feel fake. It felt tired. We met at a quiet tea shop near my place. She was already seated when I arrived, dressed down in jeans and a sweater, not a trace of the socialite vibe she usually gave off. "I appreciate you coming," she said genuinely. I sat down, keeping my guard up. "What did you want to talk about?"
She sighed.
"I'm not here to ask you for money or pressure you about the trust. I just wanted to say I'm sorry." I blinked. That was truly unexpected. She looked down at her cup. "I didn't handle the party well. I should have made sure you had a seat, a proper one. Not just because Nathan asked me to invite you, but because you deserved it." I didn't say anything. I just listened. "I thought you didn't care," she admitted. "That you were the kind of person who didn't like big events. Nathan always said you were fine being left alone. But seeing you walk out like that, I realized maybe we've all misunderstood you." I tilted my head. "So, you didn't want me there?" She looked ashamed for a moment. "No, but not because of you. Because I didn't know you. And Nathan, well, he talks about you like you're this distant, unpredictable wild card. He made it seem like you'd either not show up or cause drama. I know now that was unfair." I exhaled slowly. "I didn't cause drama. I just left." "I know," she said softly. "And that hurt worse than if you had. You walking out quietly made people start asking questions. Why didn't he stay? Why wasn't there a seat? Why wasn't there a photo of him with Nathan? My parents noticed. Even some of our friends. It was a bad look." I folded my arms. "So now I'm a PR problem." She shook her head.
"No."
"You're a reality check." We sat there in silence for a moment. Then she said something I didn't expect. "I want to make things right. Not to fix the trust. Not to fix Nathan. Just to fix this." I was quiet, still cautious, still processing. "You shouldn't be treated like a second-class relative," she added. "Especially when you've been holding more strings than any of us realized." I didn't agree to anything that day, but I thanked her for the honesty. And I left with one thought ringing in my head. Maybe I wasn't the one who needed fixing after all. The next day, Nathan called again. This time, I answered. "Hey," he said, his voice tired. Not angry, not smug. Just tired. "Hey." There was a long pause. "Ashley said she talked to you." "She did." "I'm not great at this," he muttered. "I know I've messed up a lot." I didn't respond. "I've been thinking a lot," he went on, "about the way I've treated you, the way we all have. I always assumed you were fine on your own, that you didn't want to be included. So I didn't push, didn't invite, didn't think twice."
"That's convenient," I said.
Easier to believe someone doesn't want to be included than to admit you've left them out. He was quiet. I could hear him exhale on the other end. "You're right." Another pause. Then, I'm not asking you to approve the funds. Not anymore. I just want to talk properly. Maybe grab lunch. Just you and me. No pressure. I didn't answer right away, because for the first time he wasn't coming to demand or defend. He was just showing up. And maybe that was a start. But I wasn't going to let my guard down completely. Not yet. Because this was the same brother who left me standing at the edge of a celebration, like I was invisible. The same brother who only realized I mattered when the money stopped. And now the real question was, did he care about me or just what I could give him? The next move was mine, and I had one in mind. I didn't say yes to lunch right away. I told Nathan I'd think about it. And I meant it. Because here's the thing. Words are easy. A few sorries. A few we misuse. And suddenly everyone thinks the slate is clean. But I wasn't looking for clean. I was looking for real.
And real takes time.
Real takes action. So I waited. A few days passed. Then a week. No follow-up calls. No desperate voicemails. It was oddly peaceful. I thought maybe Nathan had given up, accepted my silence as a no. Then one morning I got a letter. Not an email, not a text. A physical letter, handwritten, 3 pages long. It was from Nathan. I sat at my kitchen table with my coffee and read the whole thing twice. It wasn't perfect. Parts of it felt like he was still trying to justify himself, still trying to rationalize the years of silence, of exclusion. But buried in all that, there was something genuine. He told me about the pressure he'd felt taking over Dad's role in the family, how Mom leaned on him, how he leaned into the idea that he was the good son, the reliable one. How he resented me for having the freedom to walk away from all of it while he stayed behind and did what was expected. He wrote, I told myself you didn't care because that was easier than admitting I did. I looked at you and saw someone brave enough to live on their own terms. And instead of learning from you, I judged you. I made you the outsider because I didn't know how to be anything but the insider. That part stuck with me. He ended the letter by saying, if you never want to speak to me again, I get it. But if there's a small part of you that wants to rebuild something, even if it's slow and awkward, I'm here. I stared at those last 2 words. I'm here. It didn't fix everything, but it was a start.
So yeah,
I agreed to lunch. We met at a small diner we used to go to as kids. He picked it on purpose. I could tell he was already there when I arrived, sipping black coffee, looking nervous. It was a weird full-circle moment, sitting across from him in that old vinyl booth, the smell of pancakes and bacon in the air, like no time had passed. Except everything had. We talked. Not about the trust, not about the party, not even about the letter, not right away. We talked about stupid things, like how weird it was that the diner still had the same jukebox. How Dad still refused to upgrade his phone. How Rachel had recently tried to go viral on TikTok with a video of her dog wearing sunglasses. We laughed. It wasn't forced. It wasn't fake. Eventually, the conversation drifted into deeper water. He asked about my writing, my travels, my last relationship. I asked about his business, about Ashley, about whether he was actually happy or just checking boxes on some invisible family to-do list. He hesitated, then admitted, I don't know. That, more than anything, told me he was trying. We talked for 3 hours. At the end of it, we didn't hug. We didn't cry. We didn't make dramatic promises to stay in touch. We just said, let's do this again. And I admitted it felt good. But that wasn't the end.
there was still the matter of the trust.
See, even though Nathan had made an effort, there were still structural issues with his business proposal. The review I'd requested had uncovered some questionable spending. Nothing illegal, but sloppy, unprofessional, and honestly, not the kind of thing Grandpa would have signed off on. The firm called me a few days later. "What do you want to do?" they asked. And I realized I didn't want to block him. I didn't want revenge. I wanted accountability. So I called Nathan. Told him what the auditors found. Told him he had 2 options. He could rework the proposal with full transparency and documentation, or the funds would be denied. I expected him to argue, to get defensive. Instead, he said, "Fair." Then he paused and added, "Will you help me fix it?" That part I hadn't expected. We spent the next few weeks going through everything: meetings, calls, spreadsheets. I showed him how the trust board evaluated proposals, how to frame things, what not to say. It was awkward at first, but slowly something started to shift. We weren't just brothers again. We were teammates. Word got around, of course. Mom found out. At first, she didn't say anything. But then one Sunday afternoon, she texted me out of the blue. "Dinner tonight?" No explanation, no emoji. Just dinner tonight. I stared at it for a good 10 minutes, then replied, "Why?" She answered, "Because I owe you an apology." I didn't go. Not that night. But I didn't block her either. Because, like I said, real takes time. Ashley and Nathan eventually sent out new wedding invitations. Same couple, same location, but a completely different approach. This time, my name was not just included. It was printed first on the list of family members in the inner envelope. There was a handwritten note from Ashley tucked inside. "We'd be honored if you came. There's a seat with your name on it, literally." And you know what? I went. The wedding was beautiful, classy, thoughtful. And when I arrived, the first person who greeted me was Aunt Linda. But this time, she looked mortified. "Jordan," she said with a tight smile. "So glad you could make it." I smiled back. "Didn't think I'd actually show, did you?" Her cheeks flushed. "Well, of course we hoped." "I have a seat this time, right?" I asked, walking past her. I found my table, table 3, close to the dance floor. My name was there, engraved on a thick white card in elegant script. Next to it, a small place card that read, "Thank you for holding us accountable." Funny how things come full circle. What started as an insult, being invited out of pity, had turned into something else. I was no longer the forgotten sibling, no longer the outsider. But I didn't need to be the center of attention either. I just needed to be seen. And now I finally was. Not because I made a scene, but because I made a choice. To stop apologizing for existing in the shadows of people who never offered me light. To stop letting guilt dictate my boundaries. To speak up. To walk out when I needed to. And to walk back in on my own terms when I was ready. Because sometimes, the quietest exits make the loudest impact.